Yo, this is the Scarcity Studios YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And our sponsors are Alpha Claims and Hire Birmingham, the leading and best accident management company. Get a replacement car anywhere in 1 hour. This main story from this video takes place in Manchester, but there's also some news from London as well, because I know we've got a lot of London subscribers as well. The Metropolitan Police Service have released information today about the amount of domestic violence incidents since the lockdown began. And they have been urging victims to come forward, and anybody that suspects their friends or family members might be suffering at the hands of an abusive partner. In the 6 weeks from the 19th of April, officers across London have made 4,093 arrests for domestic abuse offences, nearly 100 a day on average. The domestic abuse calls have risen by a third in around 6 weeks. The number of recorded domestic abuse incidents have seen a small year-on-year rise, but they have increased by 9% from last year. The following are examples of domestic violence cases that the Metropolitan Police have had to deal with in recent weeks. Officers attended an address in East London after a domestic assault victim reported being threatened by her partner. Police did a background check on the partner and they revealed that he had firearm offences. Officers located him within 3 hours of receiving the report and searched his vehicles. They found 2 sawn-off shotguns and a cannabis factory after they searched his house. The man was charged and is awaiting trial. In a second incident, officers were called to a domestic abuse incident in East London again, where a woman was pregnant and she'd gone to the hospital to seek refuge. Her partner had assaulted her and tormented her. He was quickly arrested and she was unwilling to support any criminal action. But due to the evidence on the body-worn camera, the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, supported a victimless prosecution. With the recent stay-at-home instruction, the commander for the police said that it's vital to manage the public health crisis, especially with mental health and also domestic violence. Unfortunately, with current affairs and the political situation, it has left people vulnerable and also isolated. And there's been a rapid rise in the amount of these sort of cases. And of course, anybody is in this situation, do not hesitate to try and get help. There is always a charity out there or somebody that can help you. And if you can't, try somebody that will direct you in that right place. Find a friend that you can trust to be able to communicate with. Or if you are somebody that has committed domestic violence as well, if you've got anger issues and you need to talk to somebody, you do need to get that help before the situation escalates even further. Because in this next story, I covered this and shared it on Instagram recently in the week. Please don't forget to follow us on there as well, and Twitter as well. We've got nearly 21,000 followers on there. And that's amazing, because I never thought I'd get that much on Instagram, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. This next story took place outside Pentonville Prison in London. Some people didn't know that there actually was a Pentonville in London, but there is. And a woman was stabbed outside there on the 21st of April. No other information about that apart from a small article in the Islington Gazette. And this story has absolutely no coverage whatsoever. But the police have released information about a man called Evans Innocent, who is 44 years old. He has been charged with multiple offences in relation to 4 stabbings across London within a week period. On the 21st of April, he stabbed a woman on Caledonian Road. And then on the 3rd of April, he stabbed somebody else on Trinity Road. The 7th of April, he stabbed somebody on Whittington Road. He was also arrested and charged with 6 possessions of offensive weapons, namely a knife in a public place. So he was caught with 6 knives on him. He was charged also with 3 thefts from dwellings, so that's burglary, and also failure to comply with the requirements of the sex offenders register. So this means that a man who was a convicted sex offender and was stabbing people was walking around London with multiple knives on him, just burgling, attacking, stabbing anybody that he felt like. And being as he was a sex offender, he should have really been on extra supervision. So whatever, I don't even understand how this even happened. The most recent one, the Caledonian one outside Pentonville, was at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 21st of April. A woman in her 40s was stabbed and taken to hospital, but she was discharged as well, so it couldn't have been too serious. And the 22nd, he was arrested, so it was the day after, so he still was walking around for another day. So he had a rampage, it seems, And I can't help but wonder if this is related to maybe mental illness, drug addiction getting out of hand during this lockdown period. But obviously it's too early to say. If we do hear anything of this case, I will try and cover it again in the future when there's more information. But the main story of this video, there's no video for this. There's no actual content. This is just a discussion that needs to be had. A sexual predator that forced his way into a young woman's home and raped her in front of her children. John Ward, 24 years old, and his friend as well was also convicted. We'll talk about him in a minute. Aaron Farrell. They molested a shocked woman as she walked a family dog and a young child in the street in Rochdale, telling the youngster, "I'm your new dad." She managed to flee, but the drunken Ward, who was also high on cocaine, pursued her and forced her into a home, pushed her onto the stairs and covered her mouth with his hand as he carried out a series of violent sexual assaults on her. He slammed the living room door shut on her terrified children, who screamed in terror, one of them shouting in vain for Ward to get off her mother as the attack took place in the hallway. Held the door shut and told the children, "I'm talking to your mum." The terrified victim had to move out the house the same night. She never returned and still suffers from flashbacks. Her young children were left traumatised. Today, Ward from Rochdale also, and his accomplice Aaron Farrell, 24 from Middleton, who watched the rape through the kitchen window and then wiped their fingerprints off the front door handle. They are beginning their jail sentences for this horrific crime. Jailing him for 16 years at Minchell Crown Court on Friday, the judge told the defendant that he brutally raped his victim. Throughout this appalling and dreadful ordeal, she could hear her children screaming and crying. They knew their mother was being attacked on the other side of that door. At one point, they were able to open the door only for you to slam it and continue with your depraved behaviour towards their mother. She was terrified not just by your appalling sexual abuse of her, but from her helplessness and the powerlessness to break free from your grip and protect her and her children. The trauma and the anguish that she must have experienced at this time is unimaginable, and you treated your victim in this manner as an object to satisfy your wicked, evil desires. The prosecution told the court that the mother had left her house in Rochdale at 10 to 9 in the morning with the family dog, and she noticed two men, Ward and Farrell, swinging a wine bottle and very much the worse for wear, they said. Farrell began to try to engage in conversation with her, and she wanted to get past them. As she spoke with them to keep the situation friendly, Ward moved towards her to stand in front of her. Farrell was behind her. They made comments such as, "You're good looking," and asking her whether she was single, and at one point calling her a MILF. Ward asked her for a kiss and Farrell told her, "Yes, give him a kiss, nothing will happen," the court was told. The woman refused and pointed out that she was with a child, but they continued to harass her. The prosecution said she felt intimidated and was fearful that they had a knife, and she attempted to give the defendant Ward a peck on the cheek, hoping to appease him in order to allow her to escape his attention. As she did this, he turned his face and put his tongue in her mouth. Ward tried to kiss her in the same manner again. He also told the child that he was her dad. The woman walked off with her dog, and when she arrived at home, she checked for her second child. But moments later, she saw the two men peering through her window, and she was so frightened she slammed the kitchen door shut, leaving her two children panicked and upset at the sight of the men in the window. CCTV uncovered by the police later showed the men at the house, and one of the men in a state of distress before they climbed on top of the bin store. The mother opened the door slightly and screamed as she saw both men running through the lounge towards the kitchen while her children began to scream and cry. She shouted at the men to get out of her house, at which point they did, she said. The woman locked the door and closed the curtains and thought that the ordeal had come to an end. Around 10 minutes later, she heard another knock at the door. Believing it was unrelated to the males, and without thinking, she unlocked the door and opened and to see the defendant Ward stood in front of her. She described him as very, very drunk. He was carrying a bottle of alcohol and could not walk straight. Ward told her that he fancied her and asked her to come into the house, and when she refused, he put his foot in the doorway so the door could not be shut. He moved into the entrance hallway and shut the door behind him. The woman's children were now hysterical. They were unable to see her, and they was in the lounge. Ward had shut the door on them. The court was told that he pulled the woman towards him and said he fancied her a lot. Ward pushed her against the wall and forced himself on her. When the children opened the door, he slammed it shut again. She said that she felt numb and the children were screaming throughout the whole ordeal. Ward had his hand over her mouth and told her to stay still. The prosecution said she described what she couldn't do. She described it as utter numbness. Farrell was caught on CCTV looking for the window to where he could see his friend raping the woman before closing the door and wiping the handle. The men fled the scene, leaving the woman on the stairs in a state of panic. She called her family, who alerted the police. One of the children later told family members she heard her mum crying and had screamed at Ward to get off her. Police were called and arrested the two men despite their attempts to escape. The men made no comment and were interviewed later on, and the woman identified Ward as the man that raped her. Understandably, this woman went through a lot of trauma afterwards. She couldn't sleep, she was on medication, and of course she had to deal with the effect that this had on the children. Just because these depraved people wanted to take drugs and just act on instinct. And it worries me that people in the local area wasn't more supportive of her, that nobody actually helped this woman, and that does sadden me. The recommendations from some society, you should say there's a fire if you're getting raped, because a lot of people would not actually turn up to a rape, but they would come to a fire. So it's sad to see that this is the sad state of affairs that it is today. And with all the sex cases that you hear from up north, I never see these sort of cases covered. So I thought it would be interesting and to get somebody's opinion on what this is about. So I really appreciate you joining me today. I really wish the best for this woman and her family and everybody else involved in these situations. So please don't forget to join us again later for some more news as well. And follow us online at Scarcity Studios. Peace.